What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam. This is Vancity Audi. Do not adjust your cell phone, your tablet, your desktop, your laptops, or your television sets. This isn't the same video you just saw of when the B9 S4 engine failed. This is of the RS3 engine failing in a much bigger way. Within 6 days of each other, both of my vehicle's engines have been damaged. One I can still use, but we know there's damage to it. The other one is toast. I will go through the step-by-step process of what took place that day on the dyno at Racing Greed, so you guys know as much as I know so far with the failure of my motor in my RS3. So not too long ago, I received the tune from Unitronic to run a TTE 855 hybrid turbo running their Stage 3 software, and I was freaking pumped. The wastegate, the control of the wastegate was figured out, and the tune hadn't been dialed up yet because I'm on a super beta program, and we were gonna go on the dyno and do a couple baseline runs to see where we stand, and then I'd set up all the cameras and everything, and then we'd get you guys the amount of power the car makes. That was the goal. So I did a baseline log on the streets of Mexico, and no issues. Thing ran flawlessly and felt great. So then I ended up going to Racing Greed a few days later, and we set the car up on the dyno, and we did one baseline run, and on that baseline run we saw a little dip, tiny bit of timing correction in cylinder 2. Nothing major though, but the power was down, so that was a little confusing. We expected the car to make more power. Even with it not turned up, we thought it would make more power. So okay, let's test it again, just a baseline run. Again, no cameras were set up, nothing was rolling because it was a baseline. I wasn't even I hadn't even done an intro or anything for you guys because the process hadn't started. So we're on it. I'm in the passenger seat. Sean, the dyno operator from Racing Greed, is operating the car, and he's on it, and we hear a little bit of a thong or some kind of weird noise, and the exhaust tone changed, and then we're on it, and I'm looking at the log, and I'm seeing correction, like bloop down, and then another cylinder, bloop down. Nothing huge, but more than you would expect with an ethanol-based tune, especially when the car's not turned up. And at about, probably about 7,000 RPM or so, I looked up, and there was oil spewed all across the windshield and smoke coming out. And I was like, let off, stop. So Sean immediately took his foot off the brake, and I'm sitting over here, and I look in the side view mirror, and there's massive plumes of smoke all out the back of the car, and my heart just sinks. Like, sinks. For those of you that are long-time subscribers of the channel, you know that I've already lost a motor in my RS3. Way back in the day when I was running a stock turbo and custom code software, the custom code software that nuked like 30+ customer cars, and I bent the third rod. They ramped in the torque way too freaking soon, and I lost that stock motor. If you guys are interested more in the story of that, I have a video on my channel that you guys can check out. Once the car comes to a stop, we immediately get out, and Sean runs around the front of the car, and there's a fire in the engine bay, and he's like, fire! So I keep an extinguisher in the back of my RS3 at all times, racing, not racing, just, you never know. So I go to remove it, and he turns off the fan. That was the first thing he did. And then he goes and gets the extinguisher right beside it, and when he comes back, he's like, it's out. So the only thing that was keeping that fire going was all the oxygen that was being blown on it from the giant fan that they use in the dyno. So we're looking at it, there's oil freaking everywhere, it's gross. And we're trying to see if there's like metal chunks or anything of the motor that like maybe it windowed the block or something. And obviously there's so much smoke behind us. So Sean and I are just like a couple big deep breaths, and what the hell happened? So the first thing we want to do is look at the log, but we're just like, is the car gonna blow up? Like, the car's turned off, like ultimately you're concerned about everyone's safety. Like, there was a fire, so is it completely out? You're looking all around the car, and fire's done, so we're okay. So the first thing we do is we don't look at the log because we were so concerned about what happened, and the noise change and the smoke out of the back. And we go around the back of the car, and my exhaust tip had blown right off the back of the exhaust. It shot across the parking lot. Now, that failed because when I first got on the dyno, I noticed the exhaust tip was crooked, and Sean was kind enough to say, I can adjust that and make it straight for you. And I said, sure, we want it to look nice. So I think when he put it on, either he didn't tighten it enough or he over tightened it, I'm not sure, but the exhaust pressure just fired that damn thing off. So that was the tone change that we heard. The exhaust tip was like this big. So when you remove that, it's down to that 3.5 inch titanium pipe that we use. So that was the change in sound that we heard. So then we go around back to the front of the car, we're looking, we get flashlights, we're looking everywhere. I take off the oil cap and it's just like smoke and steam. It was unbelievably hot inside that motor. I know the motor's toast. That's instantly what I go. And the guys are trying to be reassuring. Oh, what if it was the turbo that went? And what if it was something else? And I was like, I don't know. I had no faith that it was anything but my motor blowing up. My motor had 43,000 kilometers on it. So a lot of wear and tear for a built motor. Had that built by Iroz. They did a good job, obviously, because it lasted me a long time. A lot of wear and tear, a lot of dyno sessions, a lot of trips down Mexico, a lot of drag racing. So by no means do I feel cheated or anything like that. I had the car towed to Rider Performance. We weren't going to do any deep dives right then and there. Kyle is extremely busy, especially in the springtime. Everyone's getting their car ready for the drag strip. So we ended up putting it to the side, tucked it away. I came back the next day and washed it because it was just covered in oil. So he had some time. We pulled it in, looked at everything, pulled out the plugs. Plugs were all still good. And in cylinder one, we put down the nice camera that he has, and there was a little piece missing from the top of the piston. So we're like, oh, good God. So we turned the motor, and once that piston had dropped far enough down, we were able to see the entirety of the cylinder wall, and there is a pretty big chunk missing out of that steel sleeve. When I had my motor built by Iroz, they sleeved that motor. So it should be able to take a bit more of punishment than your standard aluminum block. So we're like, yeah, this thing's shot. But again, we didn't have the full time to take it all apart. So we do have time finally today. So I'm headed to Rider Performance right now. Kyle is gonna pull out that motor. We're gonna tear it down and see what we can see. Off the top of our heads, it looks like injector failure, because he's seen multiple injector failures at the shop, other Daza motors that he's had in or he's purchased, and people that claim that it's injector failure, and it's always in the same spot on the cylinder, like that's the spray pattern where the injector is spraying in. So that's our first go-to, which would be crazy ironic, seeing as we just had the injector fail in cylinder one in the B9 S4. If you guys aren't up to speed on that failure, feel free to check that video out. That's on the channel as well. That was the last video I just aired. So yeah, I'm just about there. We'll crack it open. It is not going to be a super thorough step-by-step process of breaking down the motor. I don't want to be shooting this video. I'm not in the greatest of moods, and I just want to show you guys for the sake of showing you guys, because I try to always be honest with my builds, what happened, what we find, what we don't find. So I'll just be getting bits and pieces of coverage, and then once we have that all done, I'll jump back in the car and I'll head back home and I'll kind of debrief you guys on what we found. Well, that wraps up my day at Ryder Performance. What an absolute nightmare. That piston is just effed up, melted, destroyed. Did you guys see the oil pan? All the sludge at the bottom of the pan? That was the melted piston. That's a forged piston. The heat that cylinder must have experienced would have been through the freaking roof. That chunk missing out of the sleeve, definitely not gonna be able to fix that. Like, if it was small enough, you could hone it out and make it a slightly bit bigger, use a bigger piston, and be okay. That chunk is significant. I think I'm gonna need a new block entirely. I'm gonna need to sleeve it. I'm gonna need all new internals. This is gonna be a massive, massive bill. Holy crap, that freaking sucks. So, was it an injector failure like we thought? We really don't know. Yes, there was a lot of damage. All of the spark plugs were fine. The injectors themselves, 3, 4, and 5, all appeared to have carbon buildup. 2 looked like it was a freaking brand new injector, and number 1 had a bit of carbon on it. Nothing crazy, but nothing to the point where visually we could see that something was wrong with them. So I've removed them. I have them all with me. I'm gonna bring them to a local shop that can test them all for me. Now, I can't have them tested at the same pressure that you'll find in the Daza motor. I'm not too sure what the pressure is. I don't know, like 280 PSI or higher kind of thing. I think that's at least possibly what they run at. The highest they can test at is 140 PSI, but I'm hoping it'll still be able to give us a comparison of the flow rates at that pressure. So I'll do that to kind of rule that out and see how they perform against one another. What I'll do is I'll pick up the action again once I've had those injectors tested, and I can speak to their flow rates and their spray patterns to see if cylinder 1 had any differences between the other cylinders. So a few days have passed now. I now have the results of testing those direct injectors, and sadly the results don't give me a clear-cut and definitive answer on what happened with my damn motor. So they tested all 5 injectors at 120 PSI to start off with. And again, that isn't anywhere near the operating pressure when they're at full tilts in your motor. But that's what they have. That's what I have available to me locally. 1 was leaking, but it wasn't cylinder 1. It was cylinder 2. So cylinder 2 at 120 PSI was leaking about 1 drop every 3 seconds. The flow rate between all 5 cylinders ranged from 99 cc's to 104 cc's. So not crazy off. So once they had that done, they checked the spray pattern. Spray pattern looked pretty good, pretty even across all 5. Then they cleaned them to see if they'd improve. The flow rates improved. I think it was between 101 and 104. So it improved and they were closer. And cylinder 2, the injector, stopped leaking once it was cleaned out. So I don't know, man, it doesn't give me a definitive answer. We did see correction in cylinder 2 the run previous, and then we saw it again on the run where the motor let go, but it was cylinder 1 that had the problem that ended up melting and just blowing everything up. So I don't know what to tell you guys. Definitely the direct injectors were not working as well as they should. The flow rates were pretty good. The fact that cylinder 2 was leaking, not cool, but now that they're cleaned, they're rated really well. The flow was good, everything was good. But I'm not going to be putting them back in my car, that's for damn sure. I am going to be purchasing the most revised direct injector available in the market, and I think the last letter is an N. I was using an L. So I think when I first bought the car back in 2018, I think it had like a G in it or something. So there's been a ton of revisions to these injectors. So what do we do now? That's the big question, guys. What do we do? I have this broken motor. So I have contacted Iroz Motorsport with a bunch of photos of what we discovered and said, what the hell can we do? The motor's sleeved. So is there any way we can salvage the block? And thank the racing gods, it looks like we may be able to. I reached out to them and they said, if I send them the block, they should be able to re-sleeve cylinder 1 only, and the rest of the block looks fine. So freaking amazing, able to save some money, save some time. I will get that sent out to Iroz Motorsport as soon as we possibly can, and then it's just a waiting game. We'll order all of the parts in the meantime to kind of make sure we have everything, so when we do get the block, we're good to go. And with any luck, I might spice it up a bit more. We had a basic stage 1 engine build from Iroz Motorsport: rods, rod bearings, pistons, and head studs. That's all I had done to the motor. Oh, and sleeved, obviously, but I've already mentioned that. So now, is there extra stuff you can do to the motor? What else can you do? Maybe a little head work? Only time will tell. We'll see if I can afford it. With all the stuff that's been going on, my bank accounts have run dry. B9S4 problems, RS3 problems. It has not been going well for me. So stay tuned to the channel, guys. I promise you I will keep you appraised of the situation as we go through fixing the issues. We hope to come back stronger and, more importantly, come back even faster. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and until next time, take care.